The love that John and Laura had seemed to have been predetermined from the beginning of time. Their relationship was unbreakable from the minute they first met. It was a special type of love that caused even complete strangers to halt and grin about them. They had a fantasy of having a wedding that was like something out of a storybook, and they wanted to fill their house with the pleasure of fatherhood, laughing, and the sound of small footprints. In spite of this, Destiny had other intentions. In the course of a routine checkup, their whole world came crashing down. "I'm sorry, but pregnancy would be extremely dangerous for both of you," the doctor remarked emphatically. "I'm sorry, to put it simply, Laura was born with a genetic abnormality that was so uncommon that it rendered her body incapable of carrying a pregnancy to term." Which dangers are there? Complications include as severe bleeding, organ failure, and even death. And if by some chance the kid were to survive delivery, it would almost certainly inherit the same disease, which would consign it to a life that is full of suffering and short in duration. In their advice, the physicians urged against it. Both of their families pleaded with them to change their minds. However, John and Laura had already decided everything they wanted to do. Laura held John's hand and said, "We'll take the risk," as she did so. "If there's even a 1% chance, we have to try." It was a living hell for the subsequent 9 months. It seemed as if Laura's body was fighting against the pregnancy like an intruder. She was admitted to the hospital on many occasions, and her physical condition deteriorated with each passing week. As she wailed in anguish, John never left her side, and his heart broke with each and every one of her complaints. Eventually, the day arrived immediately after Laura went into labor. The medical personnel at the hospital immediately moved into emergency mode. It had been constantly brought to their attention by the chief obstetrician, Dr. Bennett, that this birth may have disastrous consequences. An improbable event had place, however, as Laura exerted every last bit of her might to continue. The birthing room was filled with astonished quiet the moment the baby was brought into the world. Chaos ensued after that. Nurses let out a gasp. An alarming beep was coming from a monitor. As he gazed at the infant, Dr. Bennett's hands began to shake. This can't be real. The infant was totally flawless. There are no genetic problems. No indications of Laura's condition were found. She is crying, healthy, and alive, but it wasn't the most surprising element of the story. Following the birth of Laura, the post-delivery testing revealed that her condition had improved. There was no trace. Like it had never been a part of the world, the news quickly spread like wildfire. Those in positions of authority in the fields of science, genetics, and religion all pleaded for solutions. It seems inconceivable that a hereditary condition that is lethal could suddenly vanish. What was the cause of the baby's miraculous survival? Some others referred to it as divine intervention. There were also rumors that a medical aberration that was beyond human comprehension was there. There was little interest in the hypotheses on the part of John and Laura. While they were holding their kid, tears were running down their cheeks. They were aware that they had refused every bizarre request. After that, however, the tests were repeated. Embedded deep inside the baby's DNA was something that could not possibly exist. In the whole history of humanity, a DNA sequence that has never been seen before. This mutation is so far evolved that it shouldn't even be possible. The government became involved at that point in time. Their door was greeted by men dressed in black suits who demanded immediate responses. Blood samples were taken, and they posed questions that were hard to answer. Then the threats started to come. An agent said in a chilly manner, "Your child is no longer yours to keep. He belongs to science." It was John and Laura who ran. They have become fugitives, and they are being pursued for the miracle that they have made. Their kid is the key to a genetic discovery that has the potential to profoundly alter the course of human history. The question that remains, however, is, could he possibly be human? What exactly is he if he is not? When John and Laura were encircled by armed men in black SUVs that were not marked, They had hardly had time to understand what was occurring. It was impossible for them to have anticipated how quickly the administration had acted. As John grabbed his newborn baby, Daniel, and a suitcase that had been quickly packed, he snarled, "There is no time, we have to go now." The maternal instincts that Laura had overpowered her tiredness, and she pushed herself to walk, despite the fact that she was still weak after giving birth. Just as the agents kicked in the front door, they slipped out of the rear entrance and fled the building. In the first 48 hours, everything seemed to be a haze of bus terminals, stolen automobiles, and fabricated identities. John made advantage of his previous military expertise to keep them off the grid, but they were aware that this strategy would not be sustainable. The whole of the nation was eagerly searching for them. Then, the videos began to become available online. There was a shaky cell phone video from the hospital that went viral. It showed nurses sobbing and physicians speaking in shock one another. The conspiracy forums were flooded with speculations, including the question, was this child engineered? A test conducted by the government to be an angel? People in the media referred to him as the miracle baby. However, he was referred to by the government as Asset X. Not only was Daniel in good health, but he was outstanding. He had reflexes that were more acute than those of any baby when he was just 2 weeks old. It seemed as if his eyes followed movement like to those of an adult. Daniel responded to Laura's injury by wiggling his small fingers toward her as if he wanted to assist her after she cut her finger when she was preparing a bottle. The dreams then began to appear. Laura began to have intense dreams, which included images of needles, sterile laboratories, and a voice calling out, "He was never yours," up to the point that he began dreaming about it as well. John disregarded it as stress. They reached out to Dr. Bennett, the obstetrician who had delivered Daniel, when they were on the run and desperately looking for answers. "Gabriel had been born. Let's get together." In a text message sent from a burner phone, he said, "I will explain everything." An abandoned parking garage served as the location of the conference. The appearance of Dr. Bennett was eerie. The admission that he made was that you were never supposed to survive. Laura's disease was not inherited. Rather, it was synthetically induced. You were both participants in an experiment that took place many years ago. They wanted you to go against the grain of things. There was a chill in John's blood. Who exactly are they? Immediately before to Bennett's ability to respond, a bullet from a sniper impacted his chest. Descendants were men dressed in military garb. After waking up in a room that was completely white and devoid of windows, John and Laura discovered that they were restrained to examination tables. Daniel had left the room. The intercom was filled with the sound of a silky voice crackling. "It is good to see you again, subjects." Dr. Evelyn Carter, the head geneticist of Project Prometheus, a black bio program that had been modifying human DNA for decades, entered the room wearing a lab coat. She was the person who had first entered the room. She said in a composed manner, "Daniel is not your son. The man is ours, a progression that was planned. Not to mention that you were only the delivery mechanism." Laura shrieked in pain. John battled against the constraints that he was under. On the other hand, the lights began to flicker in the distance and alarms sounded. In addition, a roar could be heard emanating from a location deep inside the complex. Daniel was not confined to a crib. He was being held captive in a confinement room. In addition, he was not weeping. He was wearing a grin. Because they were so preoccupied with debating his readings, the scientists who were observing him first failed to notice. When it happened, the machines began to malfunction. Sparks emerged from each of the displays as they burst one by one. A slight glow could be seen in Daniel's eyes. And every single door that was locked in the building opened with a slither. Next, what will take place? There is the first possibility. Daniel's abilities become completely apparent, including telepathy, energy manipulation, and something much more horrific. John and Laura come to the realization that they, too, possess concealed skills that are a result of the experiment. The third possibility is that an opposing group, such as religious zealots, renegade scientists, or something that is not human, steps in to interfere.